This is the Detroit Sports Podcast Network.
The biggest icon in podcasting.
Welcome in, everybody, to this week's episode of the DocNJock Wrestling Podcast. I'm your host, Adam the Jock Straczynski. On today's show, this AEW/ROH wrestler asks for his release and completely blows up on the owner, as well as this manager from AEW. He gone, and more coming out on Vince McMahon. We're going to get into all of that, the news and notes. We've got your preview of SummerSlam and a full changing of the guard in WWE. Doing it with me, as always, taking a look at these full-scale changes going on with WWE is the one, the only. He is the Doc, John Macaroon. What's up, cuz?
Very excited. When you start your week of wrestling with an ROH pay-per-view, you know it was good. And props to Claudio for finally winning a title. It sparked off what you talked about in terms of another performer that has a long history with ROH. You'll talk all about it, but props, finally, it comes full circle. Talk about long-term booking. Claudio Castagnoli gets a title. Props to him. I thought the pay-per-view was great. If you can only watch two matches, watch the opener and the closer because, oh my God, you'll get an hour of entertainment just alone from the Briscoes taking on FTR and then Claudio taking on Jonathan Gresham. Props. B+ to A- pay-per-view. It was really good, and it really set the scene for what we get to see. When we started Monday, it was great. You were just coming off the weekend. The buzz in WWE was Vince McMahon, Vincent Kennedy McMahon, had at Friday 405 decided that it was time to retire. Whether he was forced out because of all the money he was spending for the Poontang he was securing while he was the chairman of the board of WWE. Then we get into Monday morning, and you're just riding the wave of the bad news, and then we get the news that we all want, is that it was confirmed Monday morning. Triple H is the indeed end-all, be-all head of creative in WWE. So not only does he get to pick the talent, procure the talent, sign them, look at the relationships, he also can put his stamp and say, if I want Finn Balor to be the United States champion, it can happen. If I want to put a squash on an angle with Austin Theory, I can make it happen. And so I think when the news broke, it was by and large met with like, yes, because Triple H was the man that procured and developed the black and gold NXT brand, which everybody loved, all the memories, all the matches, 5-star matches. And then we get to what we got, the anticipation on Monday Night Raw. So I think there was nobody else in the world that should have took that job, that nobody else has what it takes and who has seen it all. And when you start banging the boss's daughter, then you get to earn the king and the throne. So the man in the throne, the man banging the boss's daughter, it's interesting kind of connotation there in that what's going on with Vince. But the man in charge is Triple H, and kudos to that. It got me excited, and I don't think there's anybody else that could have taken this job. Right, cuz?
Yeah, I think it's the best choice for that position. And look, this is coming off of the heels of what took place on Friday, where at basically 4:05 in the afternoon, total news dump by WWE, and Vince McMahon tweets out that he's retiring. Everybody's scrambling. Everybody's following up on it. You then juxtapose that with what takes place very early on Monday morning when little bits started to kind of leak out. I think it was right around 9 a.m. Little bits started to come out that Triple H was going to be named head of creative along with all of his other responsibilities and basically take over for Bruce Pritchard, who was part of that creative team, take over for Vince McMahon, who was head of creative, and really sink his teeth in and really take over and just kind of follow the succession plan that we all kind of anticipated was already in place. We all kind of figured when Vince would go on and leave WWE, Stephanie would take over as CEO, Triple H would take over as head of creative. We all kind of assumed this. We kind of felt like Triple H had been getting groomed for this because, like you said, he was the orchestrator. He was the guy who really helped take NXT, the black and gold brand, to that next level. He was the guy who really helped develop a lot of the guys that you're seeing now in WWE and helped develop a lot of the guys that you're seeing in AEW who are absolutely tearing it up. So he has a huge thumbprint on wrestling as it currently sits. And it's really amazing because I don't think anybody can tell me otherwise. The Black and Gold brand for NXT was some of the best wrestling that WWE has ever put out. I know we're all huge fans of the Attitude Era. We all love Stone Cold Steve Austin. We all love The Rock. Some of the best wrestling that you've gotten in the last 15, 20 years was from NXT. It was the stuff that Triple H was cooking up with his entire crew. It was stuff that Triple H co-signed and put his name on. And for him to get the pencil, essentially, and is now the head of creative for Raw, for SmackDown, I think it's awesome. I think if you are a WWE fan, or if you're a sour WWE fan, a guy or a gal who has been totally turned off by what you've been getting from WWE, this might bring you back. This at least gives you hope. And I think what you kind of got to see a little bit on Monday, it was a little bit of that. I thought Monday's episode of Raw was much better paced. I thought it made a little bit more coherent sense. I thought it held my attention much longer. Normally with Raw, I'm kind of tuning out after the first 15, 20 minutes. I didn't really start to kind of drift on the program until probably an hour and a half in. And then I only drifted for about 15, 20 minutes, and then I was immediately hooked right back in. So I think with Triple H being in charge, you can start to see some pretty early dividends, at least in the way the show is running and the way the show is paced. That being said, I think if you're looking for more wholesale changes, things that are bound to come, I think those will come a little bit more gradually. And that's kind of where I wanted to steer this conversation was, what is the one change that you want to see Triple H implement and really take over to really help take this into a wrestling brand that is must-see for you, is appointment viewing, that you would be upset if you missed it on a Monday night at 8 o'clock or you missed it on a Friday night at 8 o'clock? What is the one change that you want to see Triple H install and put in and really help catapult this brand into the future, into the next wave?
Yeah, it's really, really wild because it's so much that could happen. But obviously, the first thing I want is return NXT to return it to Black and Gold. Take away the bubblegum bullshit and put back NXT the way it was. Have it back to where maybe you don't call it a third brand, but get it back to the hardcore vision that he had. And then on the main roster, I don't want to use the word chaos, but I like the best way to be more unpredictable. I think continue to blur the lines between reality and what's going on in storylines. And you started to see it on Monday. I thought that the start of the show was great with you typically don't see two guys just wrestling around in the beginning where you have...
Oh, yeah, you don't ever see that. You haven't seen that in years.
Yeah, exactly. So I was thrilled at the start of Raw. I thought that at least, whether you liked or disliked what you saw, it was chaotic. It was crazy. You had to watch it. And you didn't start off with the typical Triple H in the ring. He didn't have to address anything. You just started. And I thought that really helped Monday Night Raw. I would say outside of, blurring the lines a little bit, more creative type stuff, I think the other thing is the interview segments are going too long. You can't have promos going 17 minutes, 10 tops. Dude, 17 minutes. I know everyone's watching, but I'm not even hanging on Roman Reigns' words for that long. Like, he was so laissez-faire. He was taking 5 minutes almost in between words. I know I'm being hyperbolic, but it was like he was so chill. He was just like, yeah, guys, I'm the dog here, and nobody's going to stop it. And it was like, come on, chop, chop. Like, this is wrestling. Like, get to it. That cannot happen where an opening segment of talking is that long. 8 to 10 minutes, get in, get out, say what you got to say, pick up the pace. Okay. Like, I think Roman Reigns and the Bloodline are trying to fuck around to see how long their entrance can be, because literally they stand there, they pause, they put their arms up in the air, they pause again, they take a leisurely stroll. They didn't get to the ring until like 8:06. Like, come on. Like, I know you set the table with a 1 or 2 minute blur, but a 6 minute walk to the ring even though it's over, like, come on, chop, chop, get to it. You know,
It is a very long
What
entrance.
the hell? Yeah, chop, chop, get to it. Cut the promos. Be a little bit more creative in blurring the lines between reality and storyline.
I think for me, the one thing that I would love to see is, and look, I asked you for one thing. You went on and gave me 3 or 4, which I guess tells you the status of WWE, at least in your mind. Is that there's so much that kind of has to be tidied up and tightened up. A lot of screw tightening for John to make him appreciate WWE once again. But I think the one thing for me is have meaningful and impactful storylines. You know, we've got so many different storylines where it just kind of feels like characters are just kind of thrown away, or they just seem to be aimlessly doing nothing. You know, I think a prime example is Alexa Bliss. Alexa Bliss, for a women's division that is incredibly weak, Alexa Bliss should be somewhere in your top 3 to your top 5 women wrestlers. She hasn't had a meaningful story since she was paired with The Fiend, and that feels like that was over a year ago. So what has she been doing? Where has she been? What's been going on? You know, she came back months ago, and she hasn't been doing anything. Recently, she's been mixing it up with Doudrop and Nikki ASH. What? Like, this is a woman who is incredible in the ring. She's got a fantastic look. She is exceptional on a mic. She is unbelievably gifted and talented, and yet you're doing nothing with her. There's no reason for her to not have a meaningful story. So then what happens is, we'll just take Monday, for example. You've got Becky Lynch, who obviously top-flight talent. Bianca Belair, who obviously top-flight talent. They've got their own thing going on here for SummerSlam. But you've got Alexa Bliss now throwing her name into the hat to challenge whoever wins at SummerSlam. And you're just kind of like, well, how did you get there? Like, you've wrestled Doudrop 6 times, and you really haven't been a part of any picture. I mean, the one thing that I loved about wrestling, that I recall as a child, that really made it important for me and got me invested in characters, was watching them continue to rise and overcome and work their way up the pecking order. You know, it wasn't like anything was ever just gifted. Like, guys had to fight and earn. Like, when we talk about the Intercontinental Championship meaning something, the Intercontinental Championship was your stepping stone to get to the WWE Championship. Like, you had to hold that belt before you were ever in consideration to hold the heavyweight championship belt. Like, that was the only way that worked. You don't have that anymore. And that's because you don't have impactful stories. I'll bring it a little bit more current for you. We'll go Attitude Era. You've got Stone Cold Steve Austin. Stone Cold Steve Austin, the biggest star during the Attitude Era. He was the guy that WWE was built around. Ends up with a neck injury. Has to take over a year off to go heal. Well, what happens? The machine's not going to stop because you lost your biggest draw. What happens is The Rock then steps in. And then what happens is you build your program around The Rock because he had a meaningful story. He was lying in wait. He was a guy who you could tag in. Next thing you know, The Rock is off and rolling. A year goes by. Guess who comes back? Stone Cold comes back. And now guess what? You got 2 heavyweight hitters. And you can build stories off of those stories because the one guy took over for the other guy. The other guy wants his spot back now. So if you have meaningful stories, people can get elevated quickly, and you're like, oh, that's cool. That makes sense. I can see this now. Okay, you can tie all this together. And you're not just kind of like, wait, how did we get here? How did this person get what? Like, what is going on? Just have meaningful, impactful stories for everybody on your roster. Don't give us stuff on TV that has nothing to do with nothing. Don't just try to fill time. And I feel like that's what WWE does a lot. That's what Vince does a lot. He tries to be cute and he tries to just fill time. Look, a 3-hour program is a lot of programming, okay? Just filling time to fill time does nothing for nobody. You have to give us things that mean stuff. If you were giving people meaningful stories, you would not have a Sasha Banks and you would not have a Naomi throwing their titles down and walking out. And it's because you didn't have meaningful stories for them as far as creative goes. And that's the one thing that I would love to see Triple H implement. Give us stuff that means something. So when we're watching it, when we're spending our time, we are invested. We want to grab a hold of these characters. We want to go along for the ride. Get us to sink our teeth in and get us to want to go along for the ride. Now, something that is a little bit interesting with Triple H taking over. It has been said for a while. Triple H in NXT was grooming a lot of his guys, grooming a lot of the guys to help take over. And there was a lot of stuff that was said that when Vince McMahon goes, guys like Kevin Dunn, guys like Bruce Pritchard, they're going to leave as well, and Triple H is going to bring in his guys. Now, what we had when we had massive layoffs of over 200 people, a ton of the Triple H guys got broomed out. A lot of those Triple H guys got kicked to the curb, and some of them went and signed with AEW. Triple H's crew for producing wrestling and producing creative stories has basically been excommunicated. I think Triple H will try to bring some of those guys back. But what do you see happening with the Vince crew? Do you see guys like Kevin Dunn, guys like Bruce Pritchard, some of that old guard? Do you see those guys basically being futured endeavored and being broomed off to the side so Triple H can get his guys in? I'll give you a little backstory. Kevin Dunn and Stephanie McMahon, it's said that they are not on speaking terms. They do not like each other. So it's going to be really hard for a guy like Kevin Dunn, who is essentially the head of all the production. He's the guy who gives you 1,000,001 camera cuts when you're watching a wrestling event go on. It's going to be really hard for a guy like that, I feel, to survive and to operate at a high functioning level when your CEO doesn't like you and the CEO's husband, who's now head of creative, probably doesn't like you all that much either. How do you see this impacting, we're going to call them Vince's guys, the Vince crew? How do you see Triple H taking over impacting the Vince crew?
Yeah, I think that the first thing you heard of John Laurinaitis being gone, I think that that's fine. I think that obviously the big question is, what do you do with Bruce Pritchard and what role could Paul Heyman potentially have? I think the Vince crew, I don't think you're going to blow everybody out because there's value there. I think you diminish their role and you elevate different type things. And I think you need to trim. Less writers, less producers. You don't need that many people to tell a good story in the wrestling world. You need to kind of, empower is the word I'm looking for. You need to empower these professional athletes to kind of get in the ring and work their matches and get their shit over. If you need 4 people to tell you how to put together a match, including the 2 performers, 6 people talking, get the hell out of here. That's just way too many people. You need 1 producer. You need one really level-headed talent, and you get after it, and let's go. So I'm hoping that you have the opportunity moving forward to kind of streamline things. I think that there's going to be changes, and it's really, really good to have the opportunity to be able to see how Vince McMahon's crew is going to be kind of phased out. Probably Laurinaitis Dunn probably are going to be diminished, and then you're probably going to see the elevation of Paul Heyman and Bruce Pritchard given a role that can continue to kind of enhance his strength. But Triple H, just again to circle back, I think the future's bright with that man at the helm, and with Stephanie and Nick Khan doing the business. It's a great, exciting time. I think it's been the juiciest week of wrestling in a long time.
Most definitely. And this is the thing. I think Kevin Dunn, I think his time is extremely limited. He'll be the guy who definitely gets fired. I think Bruce Pritchard goes into something that's a little bit of a smaller role. It will have a little bit of an impact, but it will be severely mitigated. I think you brought up a name there, Paul Heyman. I think Paul Heyman gains much more power, and Paul Heyman has a much more significant role. Paul Heyman has a very good relationship with Stephanie McMahon nowadays, has a very good relationship with Triple H, obviously has an outstanding relationship with Roman Reigns, the face of the company, has an outstanding relationship with a guy like Brock Lesnar. Probably the reason that Brock Lesnar came back to SmackDown last week, has an outstanding relationship with Ronda Rousey, has a really good relationship with a ton of people on the wrestling card in WWE. On top of that, he is a guy who is extremely creative and is a guy who you could give a paper airplane to and say, make me a story out of this paper airplane. And he will tell you a story that will get you fixated about that paper airplane. So I can see a guy like Paul Heyman really gaining much more control in WWE and really being that right-hand man to a guy like Triple H. So it'll be really interesting to see what happens, but you're right. I think if you're a WWE fan, a lot of great things taking place. There's a lot of really a really interesting things going on. And if you're a sour WWE fan, maybe give it some time. Maybe come back in a month or so. I think we got to get through SummerSlam, which we're about to get into our predictions here. You got to get past SummerSlam, and we'll kind of see where WWE goes from here. Speaking of predictions, are you ready to get into our predictions for the biggest show of the summer?
Yes, and a renewed look at what could happen based on the new leadership. I was not excited prior to Vince retiring. I'm now very excited about this SummerSlam card this Saturday.
Yeah, and I think this makes it incredibly difficult for us with our predictions. We kind of knew how Vince thought. We knew who Vince valued. You now have a curveball in place where you do understand what Triple H values because we have the experience of watching NXT. But we don't know who he necessarily values on this card because he didn't set any of these matches up. He did not have that long-term vision of what was going to happen with each one of these stories. He is now taking over, and I expect some of these matches to be rewritten just a little bit. So let's kick this bad boy off. We've got Logan Paul taking on The Miz. Who do you think wins this one?
Man, it's tough. This one's really tough because I think this is one that is prime a candidate to be switched. How do you have Logan Paul come in and win? I mean, that's crazy over The Miz. Maybe a wonky finish, but I mean, the new era of WWE has to kind of start off a new star. And does that mean that Logan Paul is that guy? I could see it. I could see Logan Paul winning, but not Miz taking the pin, maybe a DQ. But it's got to be Logan Paul.
Yeah, I've got Logan Paul winning this one as well. Look, the Miz is absolutely fantastic. The Miz could get over a wet paper bag. He's absolutely incredible. This is how you build a new star. If you really want to build Logan Paul, and again, he signed a multi-year deal. He's going to have numerous appearances. This is how you get a guy like Logan Paul over. The thing about this match that I find to be really interesting and what could play out is Logan Paul has been heavily booed since he's coming to WWE. Nobody wants to cheer him as a face. They've got him seated as a face, and they've got The Miz as a heel. I think more people are behind The Miz, and you could turn him face, and you could turn Logan Paul heel, and you could have a bit of a role reversal and have a bit of a switcheroo here, where Logan Paul comes out of this match, goes into it being a face, comes out of it as a heel. The Miz goes into it as a heel and comes out a face with Logan Paul winning. I think you could do that, and it could be something really interesting to set up what takes place going forward. It'll be interesting to see, though. We've got Matt Riddle taking on Seth Rollins. This is a really interesting match. I feel like you could just kind of flip a coin and you're going to come out okay with however you pick this to work. I'm gonna go Matt Riddle on this one, but I could see Seth Rollins totally coming away the winner. I have no reason as to why Riddle wins this one, but I'm gonna go Riddle anyways.
See, this is tough because of this is really, really tough in that you need Seth Rollins to win. I know Riddle's the bigger star. I know that. How do you do this? How do you have Seth Rollins, one of the biggest wrestlers, lose? That's the part that kills me. I think that's
But how do you have Matt Riddle also lose, who's been one of your biggest draws in recent memory?
That's the part that's tough, is that it's so... I find that it's going to be tough, but you're right. Riddle's the bigger star, and for the greater good of the company, you have to bury Seth Rollins, which pains me to say, but it's going to be Riddle.
All right. Matt Riddle for you as well. Now we go to the Raw Women's Championship. We've got Bianca Belair taking on Becky Lynch. This seems like we've come full circle. At this time last year, Bianca Belair was your champion. We watched this together. We watched SummerSlam together last year. All of a sudden, Sasha Banks injured, can't make the appearance. Becky Lynch comes out, beats her in, 26, 29 seconds. Here we are again. Becky Lynch challenging Bianca Belair. I don't think we have a repeat of last year. I think Bianca Belair goes in the champion and comes out the champion. How do you see this one playing out?
Yeah, no doubt about it. That's a lock.
All right. Pat McAfee, who's probably been the most entertaining guy in WWE recently, taking on Happy Corbin. I have a feeling I know how you're going to pick this one, but who do you have?
Yeah, absolutely. It's going to be Pat McAfee, the most over, probably non-full-time wrestler that's out there in the world. My God, what a character. Love it. So I can't wait to see the match.
Yeah, I'm in lockstep with you. Look, Pat McAfee does a great job getting just about anything over. The guy could get over a truck that has 3 flat tires and is missing one of them, and he would make you pay top dollar for it because he's like, wow, this sounds like a great deal. Pat McAfee wins this one all day long. A recently added match this week. We've got a no DQ match, the Judgment Day, including Rhea Ripley, taking on Rey and Dominic Mysterio. How do you see this one playing out?
It's tough because Rey got over on his 20th anniversary, but the Judgment Day has to be the group. Maybe you even introduce a new character, maybe even the biggest swerve where Dominic actually joins. We'll see, but Rey Mysterio's not winning. It's going to be the Judgment Day.
Yeah, I'm going Judgment Day as well, and I was going to mention the Dominic heel turn. You could have Dominic turn heel and attack Rey, and that's how you separate them. This has been basically building and building and building, and they've dropped little hints to this, but they've not pulled the trigger yet. This might be the time where you pull the trigger and give everybody something to talk about. Now we've got the undisputed WWE Tag Team Championship. We've got the Street Profits taking on the Usos. How do you see this one playing out? Now, this is like the 96th time that these two teams have battled. Do we have a changing of the guard here? Do we have titles changing hands?
Man, I think
it's tough, right?
I'm going to do it. You have to. I think this is the time. What's the team to do it? It's the Street Profits. That's the pop of the night, Street Profits.
Look, I think I'm in lockstep with you. I'm gonna come out and say it right away. I'm in lockstep with you. The one thing I can see happening to be a little bit different here, you could have this is creative booking. You could have the Usos win. In the end, what takes place is Montez Ford gets upset with D'Angelo Dawkins, and this is where you've got the barbershop window where Shawn Michaels turns on Marty Jannetty. You could have Montez Ford turn on D'Angelo Dawkins, and this is where they go on their singles run. There's been a lot of push, been a lot of talk about separating these two. I don't know if these guys want to be separated. I'm not sure how Triple H feels about separating these guys right away. I think it would be interesting to give them one more title run before you break them up. I think the Street Profits come away the winners here, and I think it'd make for a little bit more of an interesting story having the Usos chase to get those belts back, or maybe freshen up the entire tag team division and give somebody else a little bit of a run. The United States Championship, we've got Bobby Lashley taking on Theory. Who do you see winning this one?
Do we start the process of teasing it with Theory winning it? You can't. I think that you have to let Lashley continue. Otherwise, you're diminishing a star. Lashley takes it down.
Yeah, I think Bobby Lashley wins this one as well. Look, Austin Theory on Monday, it really felt like he was almost booked into oblivion, and I'm not sure if it's just a WWE just kind of rite of passage, right? You end up with the Money in the Bank briefcase, and next thing you know, you go on a losing streak of 47 matches, only to cash in and win the whole damn thing. By the end of the night, Austin Theory could be your undisputed WWE Universal Champion, but in order for him to get there, I don't think he takes that United States Championship with him. I think Bobby Lashley retains. We've got the SmackDown Women's Championship. We've got Liv Morgan versus Ronda Rousey. I'm going to go Liv Morgan. I don't have a great reason. I think Ronda Rousey might be looking. I think she was rushed back in. I don't think she necessarily wanted to come in. I think they threw a lot of money at her, and she said, "Yeah, I'll come." And she seems a little bit disinterested with a lot of stuff. Now, Triple H is in charge. Triple H is in control. She has a great relationship with Triple H. So maybe that kind of spices things up, gives her a little bit of a renewed vigor. I don't want to see Liv Morgan be a transitional champion, and I think that's probably the one reason why I'm going with Liv Morgan retaining this belt. The fans in the WWE Universe incredibly behind her. I don't think you take it off of her just yet. I think Liv Morgan, by hook or by crook, comes out the winner in this match.
Yeah, no doubt about it. I think it's going to be a great match. I'm curious to see what kind of work rate Ronda Rousey has with Liv Morgan, because they seem to be getting along.
Yeah, no, most definitely. And it's weird because Ronda Rousey obviously a couple weeks ago put her over for the one to take the belt off of her. So it's interesting to see them doing battle again. It'll be interesting to see how they both work in the ring. We'll see what happens there. Now we've got the undisputed WWE Universal Championship match. This will be your main event. It is Brock Lesnar versus Roman Reigns. I told you last week Mattel came out with a toy that had Brock Lesnar with both belts. Is that a sign? Is that pointing to what might take place on this card? I don't think so. I think Roman Reigns retains his belts. Like I said, I could see Austin Theory end of the night cashing in and becoming your new undisputed WWE Universal Champ. But until then, I think the belts stay with Roman Reigns. I think they've got a nice little gimmick going on here. And I think Brock Lesnar ends up losing this match?
Oh, so tough. Is it time? I can't see it because it has to be the end of what's going on. So I might take the loss epically. You have to set forth a new path. Brock Lesnar, baby, ends the streak. And you have to. Roman Reigns can be somebody that can go off and do stuff, and you can come back with a different kind of vibe. I think that maybe Brock wins it, then potentially Roman gets it back at the time of, first pay-per-view, Survivor Series, kind of in the next 6 months, and then Cody can take it off of Roman. But I think that at this point in time, a shift, what's the biggest way to have a shift? Change the world champion. It happens.
Or you have Roman retain, and then you have
a cash-in.
Theory. Yeah, you have Theory come out. That's a monster shift. That is shifting the entire paradigm.
Yeah, but I'm not.
So it'll be interesting to see what happens.
No if there's a cash-in, I want a bonus point. If there's a cash-in but fails, I think he cashes in. Theory cashes in on Lesnar but fails. That way you have
so
ultimate.
You'll get a bonus point there. If Theory cashes in on Reigns and wins, I get a bonus point.
Okay.
Deal?
You see a cash in. Okay. You see a yes cash in. I see a cash in and a no. Absolutely.
Okay. All right. So real quick, just to kind of run everything back down, we both have Logan Paul beating The Miz. We both have Riddle surviving Seth Rollins. We both have Bianca Belair coming out triumphant over Becky Lynch. We both have Pat McAfee dominating Happy Corbin. We both have the Judgment Day with maybe some shenanigans from Dominic Mysterio beating Rey and Dominic. We've got new undisputed WWE Tag Team Champions as the Street Profits dethrone the Usos. We have Bobby Lashley retaining his United States Championship over Theory. We've got Liv Morgan beating Ronda Rousey to retain the SmackDown Women's Championship. And you've got Brock Lesnar winning. I've got Roman Reigns winning. You've got Theory cashing in but losing to Lesnar. I've got Theory cashing in on Reigns and winning and becoming your new WWE Universal Champion. As far as calling the card goes, I've got a 4-point lead. It's 9-5. We'll see how all this breaks down next week right here on the Doc and Jock Wrestling Podcast. In the meantime, you want some news and notes before we get out of here?
Cuz, hit me at this week's professional wrestling news and notes. What made the list?
Per Sean Ross Sapp, Jonathan Gresham has asked for his ROH release. This happened the day of Death Before Dishonor, with Gresham being very upset with the lack of communication by upper management and the time given for his match on Saturday's pay-per-view, and the creative direction for his character. So a whole lot going on there. According to the report, this hit a crescendo on Saturday afternoon when Gresham was able to pin down Tony Khan in a closed-door meeting. It is said that Gresham cursed out Tony Khan during the meeting, and after his match with Claudio Castagnoli, he deleted his Twitter account. The frustration with the lack of communication is something that has been confirmed by multiple AEW stars like Brian Cage. So it sounds like Tony Khan doesn't always have enough time for everybody, probably too busy on Twitter saying something stupid and ignorant. Also, it appears Tully Blanchard is gone from AEW. This lack of appearance at Death Before Dishonor seemingly confirms this. At San Diego Comic-Con, CM Punk also shared the status of his foot injury and the timeline for his return. At the event, Punk said his foot wasn't broken, rather it was shattered. Currently, he is learning to re-walk on it, and stated that there is no timetable for his return to in-ring action. We talked about this a little bit ago. Everybody kind of anticipated that he would be back incredibly quickly. We said there's no chance in hell. We watched way too many sporting events where guys deal with foot injuries, and it just takes time for that to heal and for them to come back, and it has to be able to withstand an impact like jumping and landing on it. And at this point, it sounds like Punk has a very serious injury, and the timeline has basically been extended. Now, some big news regarding Vince McMahon. According to the Wall Street Journal, a federal investigation could have been the reason for a very quick Vince McMahon retirement. In a new article from the Wall Street Journal, it was revealed that the new federal investigation into McMahon's hush pack allegations led to this decision to retire. The article notes, the new federal investigation into the deepening hush money scandal involving World Wrestling Entertainment Incorporated hastened the retirement of its chief executive, Vince McMahon. According to people familiar with the matter, the Securities and Exchange Commission, the SEC, and federal prosecutors have launched inquiries into the payments made by McMahon to settle allegations of sexual misconduct. The People said The media company said Monday that it has received regulatory, investigative, and enforcement inquiries, subpoenas, or demands in connection with the millions of dollars in hush money PACs. On Monday, July 25th, it was revealed that WWE made a preliminary determination that the $14.6 million in payments by McMahon should have been recorded as company expenses. So basically what this means, it's a little bit of legal jargon there. Basically what this means is the company, WWE, confirmed that Vince McMahon basically committed securities fraud. Now, WWE is a publicly traded company and unknowingly/knowingly hid over $14.5 million for paying off women that he has slept with and basically having these non-disclosure agreements with them. So it'll be interesting to kind of see how this cookie crumbles now that he's been ushered out. It'll be interesting to see if the SEC comes down on WWE or if they take suit against Vince McMahon. Either way, WWE, as well as it appears the Security Exchange Commission, both agree the $14.6 million should have been accounted for in the books by WWE, and they were not. So it'll be interesting to see kind of what takes place and what happens there. And that's going to do it for this week's wrestling news and notes.
Make sure you follow Adam on Twitter, at AdamRSGROZ. Follow the network, at Detroit Podcast. Great SummerSlam this Saturday, tonight. After you listen to this podcast, tune into SummerSlam. It's the event of the summer. Big things could happen. Could turn the tide in my favor in our predictions. I'm looking forward to it, and always looking forward to recap the wrestling world with you guys. Make sure to mention us. Tag us if you're watching. Let us know what you think of the card at Detroit Podcast. Follow Adam on Twitter at AdamRSGROZ. Anywhere you listen to your favorite broadcast, make sure you type in Detroit Sports Podcast, and our audio content will find you. No efforts needed. You subscribe, you get the content. All things covered regarding the Lions, Pistons, Wings, and Tigers, and the world of professional wrestling. I can't wait until next Saturday where we can break down SummerSlam and the future, because big changes will start to happen every single week. WWE is now becoming must-see. And now AEW, how are they going to react? I can't wait to see it. And one little bit of nugget, Jonathan Gresham came up short, against Claudio Castagnoli. And dude is 5'4". I don't know how that dude, I got to look into it, how that dude got to be where he was by being a solid technical wrestler. But his stature, oh my God. If you just look, not to make fun of him versus Claudio was a complete mismatch. And I think that might have had some factor in him cussing out Tony Khan. Let's look at it further and see if he lands. Maybe WWE puts this guy maybe in NXT and does some things. But hey, changes are coming, and it's exciting. I can't wait to break it all down with you guys next week on the Doc and Jock Wrestling Podcast.